Before everything blew up, my life was painfully ordinary. I'm 28 male. I worked a boring office job doing data entry for a logistics company. Nothing impressive, nothing meaningful, just spreadsheets, headphones, and counting down until 5 p.m. I wasn't passionate about it, but it paid the bills. That mattered to me because stability was kind of my whole thing. We lived in a small two-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. Beige walls, cheap IKEA furniture, a couch that squeaked if you sat down too hard. We had a tiny backyard with dead grass I kept promising to fix. It wasn't Instagram worthy, but it was ours. I liked that. My mental health, though, not great. I've always been fragile. That's the word everyone uses, so I'll use it too. I've dealt with anxiety and depression since my teens. Nothing dramatic enough to get me hospitalized, but enough that every day felt like walking with a cracked ankle. You can do it, but it hurts and you're always aware of it. My wife knew this from the beginning. She used to be gentle about it, or at least I thought she was. My relationship with my dad, 60 male, has never been close. He was the kind of father who provided but didn't connect. No hugs, no "I'm proud of you," just expectations and silence. My mom was the buffer. She softened him, explained him. When she died 5 years ago, that buffer disappeared. After her death, he became hollow. Not angry, not sad in an obvious way, just empty. He sold the old house, downsized, and moved closer to us so family could keep an eye on each other. We'd see each other maybe once a month. Awkward dinners, small talk, that was it. Then he started changing. He got softer, talked more, smiled more, asked about my wife constantly, complimented her cooking, thanked her excessively. It felt weird but not threatening. I thought maybe grief had finally cracked him open. That's when my wife started getting more involved. At first, it was innocent. She made him soup when he caught a bad cough. Chicken noodle, homemade, in little containers. "He's alone," she said. "It's sad." I agreed. She offered to drive him to doctor appointments because I worked during the day. It made sense. She worked shifts. She had flexibility. Then the visits got longer. An hour turned into 3. 3 turned into "I'll be home late." She'd come back smelling like his apartment, disinfectant and old books. She said he talked a lot, that he needed company, that he reminded her of her grandfather. I didn't argue. I didn't want to be the jealous husband who resented kindness. Then came the diagnosis: open tuberculosis. I remember the word "open" specifically because the doctor stressed it. Active, contagious, airborne. My dad had been coughing for months, deep, wet coughs that sounded like they came from his chest. Night sweats, weight loss, fatigue, all the textbook signs we somehow ignored. He was supposed to isolate: masks, ventilation, limited contact, strict medication schedule for months. The doctor explained how easily it spreads and how dangerous it could be if mishandled. That's when my wife stepped in fully. "She'll handle his care," she said immediately. "I'm a nurse. I know what I'm doing." She insisted she be the only one going there, said it was safer, said I was too vulnerable mentally and physically, said stress could weaken my immune system. She framed it as protection. She bought gloves, masks, alcohol wipes. She prepped his meds in labeled containers. She cooked every meal for him, sat with him while he ate, stayed to monitor his breathing. Sometimes she'd be gone all day. When I asked if that was really necessary, she snapped, "Do you want him to die alone?" I shut up. She came home exhausted but oddly energized, like caregiving gave her purpose. Meanwhile, I started coughing. She told me it was anxiety, and that was how it began. This is the part where I started shrinking. It wasn't one big moment. It was daily, quiet, psychological erosion. My wife didn't suddenly turn cruel. She became precise. Example 1. I forgot to take the trash out one night. She sighed loudly and said, "See, this is what I mean. You can't even handle basic adult tasks." When I apologized, she added, I just don't know how I'm supposed to rely on you long term. Long term. That word stuck with me. Example 2. I tried to tell her I felt disconnected from her, that I missed how we used to talk. She stared at me for a second and said, "You're always making things about your feelings. It's exhausting." Then she paused and added, "Honestly, I think you like being miserable." I stopped bringing things up after that. Example 3. One morning before work, I asked if she still loved me. I didn't mean it dramatically. I was genuinely scared. She laughed. Actually laughed. "God, you're so needy," she said. "Normal people don't need constant reassurance just to exist." I felt embarrassed for even asking. Example 4. She started telling me I remembered things wrong. Entire conversations. She'd say, "We already talked about this," when we hadn't. Or, "I explained this to you yesterday," when she didn't. When I insisted, she'd narrow her eyes and say, "That's concerning. Maybe you should talk to someone." I started believing her. At the same time, my body was falling apart. The cough came first, dry at first, then deeper, rattling. I'd wake up at night gasping for air, chest burning. I started running low-grade fevers, not high enough to feel dramatic, just enough to make everything feel unreal. My sheets were constantly damp with sweat. I told her I was scared. I told her I thought I might have been exposed to TB. She smirked. "You're not special," she said. "If you had TB, you'd know. Stop catastrophizing." One night, while I was coughing in the bathroom, she knocked on the door and said, "Can you keep it down? You're stressing me out." She still kissed me when she came home from my dad's place. If I flinched, she'd roll her eyes. "Wow, so now I'm dangerous to you?" she'd say, like I was the one being cruel. Meanwhile, my dad transformed. The same man who used to complain about spending $5 on coffee suddenly had a brand new smartphone, then a big TV, then a watch I recognized because I'd seen it online. It cost more than my monthly rent. He started dressing better, standing straighter, talking down to me. He'd say things like, "You wouldn't understand how investments work," or "Some people just aren't wired for success." He'd barely look at me when I spoke, like I was background noise. Sometimes I'd sit in the same room as both of them and they'd talk around me. Inside jokes, shared looks, conversations that stopped when I entered. I'd say something and get no response, not even eye contact. It felt like being erased while still alive. My inner monologue got dark. Maybe they're right. Maybe I really am weak. Maybe I drain everyone around me. I started thinking about how quiet everything would be if I wasn't here, how relieved they'd probably feel, how I wouldn't have to wake up coughing, apologizing, failing. One night, lying in bed while my wife slept peacefully beside me, I thought, maybe this is what everyone's been trying to tell me, that the world would be better if I just stopped taking up space. And the scariest part? That thought didn't feel shocking anymore. It felt logical. The thing that finally cracked everything open wasn't courage or clarity. It was my phone dying at the worst possible time. I'd just gotten home from work, exhausted, dizzy, coughing so hard my chest hurt. My phone was at 1%. I went to plug it in and realized the charger wasn't where it usually was. My wife was in the shower, so I grabbed her phone off the counter to order food. We shared passwords, or at least we used to. The screen lit up. One notification. From Dad. Just a single red heart emoji. My stomach dropped so fast I felt lightheaded. I told myself not to open it. I told myself there was a normal explanation, but my hands were already moving. I opened the thread. I don't know how to explain the feeling of realizing your life has been a joke to the two people closest to you. It was like reading messages from strangers wearing familiar faces. They weren't careful. They weren't subtle. They were comfortable. My wife had sent screenshots of my texts, messages where I was clearly spiraling, and added commentary like, "He's doing that thing again," rolling eyes. And I swear, if self-pity were currency, he'd finally be useful. My dad replied with laughing emojis. Actual laughing emojis. Then it got worse. They talked about my inheritance openly, casually, like it was already theirs. "He's not gonna last much longer," my dad wrote. "Just keep pressing. He's basically doing the work for us," my wife replied. One message from her made my hands shake so badly I had to sit down. "Once it's over, no one will question it. He's been unstable forever." Another from my dad. "Weak men choose the easy way. Might as well make it profitable." I felt sick. Not metaphorically. I threw up on the kitchen floor. When she came out of the shower, I was still sitting there with her phone in my hand. She froze. I asked quietly, "How long?" She sighed, like I was inconveniencing her. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," she said. "Are you sleeping with my dad?" I asked. "Yes," she said. Flat. No emotion. "And before you ask, no, this isn't sudden. It's been months." I asked her if any of it was real. Our marriage, the care, the concern. She crossed her arms. "You're exhausting. Do you know how hard it is living with someone like you? You should be grateful anyone stayed as long as I did." I asked her about the TB, about exposing me. She shrugged. "Stress kills people too." That's when the door opened. My dad walked in like he owned the place. He didn't look surprised, he looked annoyed. "So," he said, glancing at the phone, "guess that's done." I asked him why. Why me? He stared at me for a long moment and said, "You were never going to be anything. This way, at least something useful comes out of it." I hit record on my phone. I left that night. I took my wallet, my documents, my laptop, and the clothes I could fit into a backpack. I didn't take anything sentimental. I didn't want reminders. I'm writing this from a cheap roadside motel that smells like bleach and old carpet. My chest still hurts. I'm still coughing. I barely sleep. But for the first time in months, I don't feel crazy. I feel awake. So here I am, Reddit. Am I the asshole if I go to the police and expose everything, the affair, the manipulation, the plan, and destroy what's left of my family? Or should I disappear quietly before they finish what they started? What would you do?